What's up everybody, it's Grant bringing you guys a new video, and I know it's been a really long time since I've uploaded. If you guys want to skip through this part of the video, I'll have it kind of sectioned out so that you can click through and go to the spot where we're actually talking about the title of this video. But if you guys want to listen to this part, then that's cool too. So again, sorry guys, it's been a really long time since I've uploaded. It's been about a year now. There's a couple reasons for that. The first being I suffered from a pretty severe injury that I'm, still technically recovering from. And the second being I started a full-time job, and I also am doing my master's degree at the same time. So my schedule is pretty full with, those two things, and then also balancing family and friends and things like that. So I've been very, very busy. But anyways, you guys don't want to hear too much about that. Let's get right into the video. The best UFC card that could be put together right now. I want to know your guys' opinion when I go through it. Each fight, who do you think would win? Do you think it's a good fight? And if you guys have suggestions for who you would put on a card if you wanted to see the best UFC card possible as of right now, you can leave those in the description down below and we can chat about it and see what you guys think and what would be the most exciting fights. And so before we get into it, I wanted to go about this as, first off, I did just the main card, but I wanted to make sure that it was somewhat realistic. So say for example, I didn't want to do, for the main card, all 5 fights being title fights, because that's something, at least, well, to my knowledge, that hasn't happened before, or at least since I've been watching hasn't happened before. So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't something like that where I was just kind of stacking the card with, unrealistic expectations and making it something that couldn't actually happen. I believe the most title fights on a card has been 3. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what I did in when I was going about it when I was making this card. So that's kind of how we did it so that we didn't get too unrealistic. So first off, the first fight in the main card that I had was O'Malley versus Vera 2. Now again, I kind of, like I was saying, wanted to make it realistic. I didn't want to come out and just have some massive fight as the first fight, although, this could be argued that this is a massive fight. After that first fight and the way it went down, everybody really wanted to see it again. And of course, O'Malley is now challenging for the title, so whether he wins or loses that fight against Aljamain Sterling, I would still either way be interested in seeing a rematch with Vera. Of course, it would be more cool, I guess you could say, if O'Malley were to win the title and then have that rematch as a title fight against Vera. But again, even if he loses that fight, it would be cool to see them run it back, because, that's one that was kind of taken away from the fans. We didn't really get to see that because of kind of what went down, but some people would argue that that's how the fight would have played out anyways. Regardless, I would like to see the fight. They're both obviously insanely good fighters, and I'd like to see them run it back without any, injury or anything like that, and kind of see what would happen. So that's the first fight on the card. Now the second fight on the card, we move into Chimaev versus Covington. So we haven't seen either of these guys fight in a while, I believe now. But there was talk of these guys fighting beforehand, and I thought right away once I heard this news, or I don't know about this news or these rumors, I thought right away that this would be a really good fight. Obviously both of these guys are really good on the ground and with their wrestling, so it would be good to put them up against each other. Covington can take some shots despite the fact that, he did have his, I believe his jaw was broken. I'd like to see if he could still hang with Chimaev, and I guess that's kind of a crazy thing to say because Chimaev would be the one, I was about to say the underdog, but you know what, now that I think of it, the betting odds, if I had to guess, would probably have Chimaev winning that fight. But I just think this would be a really good fight. Again, the matchup would be awesome. Chimaev's still on the come up in the division. I know he's, moving around in weights and stuff like that, but since this is a fight that's had talk before and has had chat before, I'd really like to see these guys together and see who would come out on top, with the expectation that whoever wins that would likely get a title shot next. Now moving on to our next fight, and this is our first title fight of the night. It's going to be Jamahal Hill versus Pereira. And obviously this is one that would be massive. Both of these guys are strikers. I know a lot of times people like to see, say for example, they'd like to see Jamahal Hill paired up against somebody who's like a really good wrestler or somebody who's really good at jiu-jitsu. Of course that's great and all, but if you want to see the best of the best striking, and a lot of times that's what a lot of people who watch the UFC want to see, people who aren't really experienced with ground game or anything, unfortunately they don't get as excited when they see people doing jiu-jitsu or wrestling or whatever. So this one would kind of be for the people who like to see stand and brawl, but these guys are super good technical strikers, and not saying obviously that they have no wrestling. They're of course very good, just a little bit different because their basis is striking. So it would be cool to see these two guys go at it, especially because Pereira obviously is coming from that lower weight moving up to middleweight, so I think that would make it even more interesting. And obviously we all know Pereira is a very good striker, so it'd be interesting to see how he jumps up and shoots for that title against Jamahal Hill, who again is obviously a very good striker himself. Now, next up, we're moving to our co-main event. This is another rematch, it would actually be, because it would be Islam versus Volk 2. Now, I think everyone can agree this is a fight that we want to see a second time. It was obviously super close, or at least in my opinion, was super close in the first fight, and especially after I was just watching on the weekend Volkanovski's last fight, and he just looks like he keeps getting better and better. People are putting him in the GOAT conversation, and I think he's been in the GOAT conversation for a long time, so it would be really cool to see them run it back and see what would happen in that second time. I guess, Volkanovski knows a little bit more of what to expect, not that he didn't in the first time, but, sometimes things get switched up when you're fighting somebody for the second time. You kind of know, or can kind of figure out what's going to happen a little bit better than, if you hadn't already fought them, but that could also be the same for Islam as well. So this would be a fight that I've been super interested in. I was super interested in it the first time around, and honestly, I think I might be even more excited to see it the second time around. And I believe Dana said that this is going to happen after Volkanovski's last win. So this is another fight that is probably going to happen, or at least it's looking like it's going to happen. So that would be the co-main event for this card. Now, moving on to the main event of this card, and I know that Ngannou is no longer in the UFC, but let's pretend for a minute, we're going back a little bit in time, let's pretend it's going to be Jones versus Ngannou. Now, of course, Ngannou is probably the scariest heavyweight that has come across the UFC, at least in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you would probably agree with that, especially the way, he knocks people out like it looks like they get hit by a car. He's obviously super strong. But of course, you've got Jon Jones on the other side. Again, somebody who's in the GOAT conversation, and I wanted to have a couple of people who, a lot of people consider the GOAT, and, Volkanovski and Jon Jones on the card, just to, I guess have them on the same card. But this fight between Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou would obviously be massive. We saw how Jon adapted to heavyweight, and we saw how he performed and obviously did really good. And we also know that Ngannou is not exactly the wrestler, but is obviously super strong and is a natural heavyweight. So this is a fight that I've literally wanted to see ever since, well, Francis was the champion and Jon Jones was moving up to heavyweight. Now we know that the chances of this happening now are obviously very slim because Francis is no longer in the UFC. But of course, this is a fake or pretend card, so let's just pretend that Jones and Ngannou would be fighting. I think that would be an awesome main event. And again, guys, as I said at the beginning of the video, let me know who you would think would win each of these fights. I think some of them are pretty tough. I think some of them you guys might feel strongly about, but you never know. There's lots of upsets in the UFC all the time. And then maybe in the comments, if you guys comment who you think will win, we can go back and forth. I'll give my opinion on who I think would win each of them. But yeah, guys, that's essentially the card that I put together as what I think would be the best UFC card that they could put together right now. Again, let me know your guys' thoughts, and I apologize again for not uploading in so long, but again, hopefully we can get back on track and upload, at least a little bit more than once every year. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.